Hi, this is Linda Noss, and this is the 5th video in the concentration video series. So when we last left you, I had a grid printing out, and then when you click on it, it would pop the picture up. So now we're going to create a grid of pictures. And in order to do that, I have to work with the grid class. So at the top, I just basically want to create a two-dimensional array of pictures, and pictures are P images, and then I have the double square brackets, and I'm just going to call this pic. So that's going to create my grid of pictures. And then what I have to do is I have to actually put them into, I have to put the pictures into the grid. Now I have a whole bunch of pictures that I have saved, so I'm just going to put them into the grid by number. And that's essentially what I'm going to do. So let's see here. I have a constructor here that allows me to create a bunch of buttons. And I don't want buttons in this one, so I'm going to have to create a whole new constructor. So you can have more than one constructor in a class, and that's what we're going to do here. So essentially, I created a second constructor here that has all the same stuff as the first constructor, but at the end I bring in an array of images, or a two-dimensional array of images, and I just called them pic. And so basically when I want to put the pictures into the grid, I have to declare my two-dimensional array of pictures. And I have to have my two-dimensional loop because, again, I'm doing pictures. Let's just compare to what I have over here to make sure I'm doing this. Okay, and then inside of the for loop, I'm actually loading the images up into the array. So if you look at my documents, processing, it's right there, and then you go into concentration. If you look at my images, you can see that I have all these images and they're all named pretty much the same, except the number here changes. So as I load the images into my two-dimensional array, I want to be able to change the number here. So what I did was I created a variable called counter, and it's just going to count from 0, which is the first number of my image, to 19, which is the last number in my image. So I'm going to create a counter, and then I'm going to load, then I'm going to use that to count from 0 up to 19. And each time it goes around the loop, counter is going to add one more to itself. So the first time it goes around the loop, counter is equal to 0, because I said equal to 0 up here. So I'm loading image0.png, and when it goes around again, counter's added one to itself, so now it's loading image1.png, and then 2.png, and then image3.png, so forth and so on. I'm also telling the computer where to place itself, where to place each one of these images, so it actually places them in a grid-like formation, and I'm using pretty much the same idea that I used up here in my button array with the Y and the X and the width plus 2. So I'm using the exact same idea, except I'm dealing with an array of images instead of an array of buttons. So that will put all my images into the array. Okay. Now, here's the deal. I'm using two different constructors. This constructor right here, this is a constructor for pictures. Okay, and you can see I'm bringing in an array of pictures right here from the outside world. Up here, this is an array, this is a constructor for buttons. So I have to treat these a little bit differently when I create them. So when I go back to my main program, I'm going to create another grid, And I also have to create an array of images. I'm just going to call that BG. And then inside of my setup, I actually have to create the array by newing it. And then telling the computer what the size of the array is. And then I have to change, I got to actually call the constructor for my pictures. So this is the button constructor, which looks like this. And if I go down, you can see the picture constructor looks pretty much the same, except it has this extra thing at the end here for pictures. So I'm just going to grab that, and I'm going to call this pic grid, and I'm going to set it equal to a new grid, just like the line underneath here, except instead of having 6 things inside the parentheses, I'm going to have 7 things. So I'm going to have my X and my Y, my width and my height. I'm going to have, oh, this is my width and my height. So the first 2 numbers are the 4x4 grid. Then I have my X and my Y. Then I have my width and my height. And then I have the array of pictures, which is called BG. So now I can use that array. And I'm just going to comment that out for right now so you can see it. Well, actually, let me show you what happens when you don't comment it out, hopefully. So you have an array of pictures, still doing this. The problem is this array here is underneath because I told it to print out in my grid method. I told the pictures to print out right here. So when I create my 2-dimensional array of pictures, it automatically puts them onto the screen. So in order to see them, I've got to make sure that I don't have the color blocks blocking them, because the color blocks are sitting right on top of them. So I'm going to go back over here and just comment this out and then run it again. And you can see that I have a grid of pictures here. So that's how you create your grid of pictures. We do have to go back and figure out how to randomly pick where you put them, and obviously we don't need all these pictures, we only need half of them. So we have to figure that out too. So we'll see you next time. Have fun.